The boy's knees gave out first. His arms were shaking so hard the baby nearly slipped straight out of his grip. And he was barefoot, blistered, walking on pavement hot enough to blister skin in under a minute. 6 years old, 2 days without a single meal, carrying his baby sister through miles of Arizona desert because there was nobody else left to carry her. When he saw the motorcycle slow down, he screamed with everything his small body had left. "Please don't leave me. Everybody leaves. Please, mister. She's dying. My sister's dying, and I can't hold her anymore." The engine died, and the man on that bike, a man most people crossed streets to avoid, sat frozen for exactly 1 second before he swung his leg off the seat and started walking straight toward the thing he'd spent 12 years running from. Connection. Before we go further, if stories like this one matter to you, take a second to subscribe so you don't miss where it goes, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far this one travels. Ash Calder hadn't spoken to another living soul in 11 days, and that suited him fine. People asked questions he didn't want to answer, about the faded ink crawling up the side of his neck, about the scars across his knuckles, about the patch he'd cut off his vest 12 years ago, but could never quite cut out of his chest. The highway stretched empty in front of him that afternoon, the sun dragging low and gold across the desert, and Ash wasn't paying attention to any of it. He was too busy arguing with a ghost. "You're a coward," the ghost of his old club president whispered somewhere in the back of his skull. "Walking away from your brothers. For what? For strangers?" He twisted the throttle harder, like speed could outrun a memory. 12 years earlier, they'd handed him a gas can and pointed him toward a house where a young family slept. A mother, a father, 2 kids barely out of diapers who testified against one of their own. Burn it down. The order had come. Make an example. Ash had stood in that driveway and looked at the tricycle tipped over on the porch, the little sneakers lined up by the door, and he'd said no. They beat him half to death for it. 3 weeks in a hospital bed. When he walked out, his club, his name, his whole identity had been stripped away, and he'd been riding nowhere in particular ever since. Then, he heard it. At first he thought his engine was misfiring, some high, thin sound cutting through the rumble of the bike. He eased off the throttle to listen closer. Not the engine. Crying, a child crying. The kind that holds nothing back because there's nothing left to hold back with. Every instinct told him to keep riding. Someone else would stop. Someone better suited. Someone who hadn't spent 3 decades becoming exactly the kind of man that sound would want to scream away from. But the crying kept climbing, more desperate with every second, and Ash found himself pulling onto the shoulder before he'd consciously decided to. That's when he saw them. A boy, no older than 6, stood 20 feet off the road, blistered bare feet planted on scorched asphalt, clothes hanging off him in torn strips, face streaked white with dried tears through a layer of dust. But it was what he was carrying that made Ash's chest go tight. A baby, wrapped in a blanket that might once have been pink, now the color of the dirt road they'd walked. The boy's thin arms trembled violently under the weight, but he held on like his own life depended on it, because it did. Ash swung off the bike. The boy stumbled backward, eyes flooding with terror. "Stay away," he shouted, voice cracking. "I got a knife. I'll cut you." Ash stopped where he stood, hands raised slow. "Easy, kid. I'm not going to hurt you." That's what the man at the gas station said, too. Then he tried to grab her. "You're not taking my sister." Ash processed that fast. Somebody had already tried to snatch these 2. This boy had been fighting off a predator while dragging his baby sister across open desert at 6 years old. "What's your name?" Ash kept his voice low, the same tone he used to gentle spook dogs back when he still had a life that involved things like dogs. The boy hesitated, arms shaking harder. The baby let out a whimper so weak it barely qualified as a cry. "Eli," he finally whispered. "This is Ruby. She's one." "Eli." Ash said it back like he was making a vow. "I'm Ash. Now we're not strangers. You're one of those bad bikers. I seen your kind on TV. You hurt people. I used to." He wasn't going to lie to this kid. Something told him lying wouldn't work anyway. Haven't in a long time. "Why should I believe you?" Ash looked past him at the baby, whose head lolled in a way that made his stomach drop, skin gone the wrong shade of gray. "Because your sister's dying, Eli, and I think you already know that." The bravado cracked straight down the middle. "She won't eat. I ran out of formula. I gave her creek water, but she threw it up. She's so hot, and she was crying all night, and now she's not crying at all. And that's worse. That's so much worse." Ash took one careful step closer. Eli didn't run. "Where's your mama, son?" The question hit Eli like a blow. His knees buckled, and he caught himself still clutching Ruby. "She won't wake up." "I tried everything. I shook her and yelled, and I even hit her, and I'm sorry I hit her, but she was cold." "She's been cold 3 days." Ash's jaw tightened. He understood exactly what that meant. "Your daddy?" Something hardened behind Eli's eyes, fear curdling into hate in an instant. "He's the reason we ran. He hurt Mama bad. She said we had to hide someplace he couldn't find us. Then she got sick and needed her medicine, and I don't know what happened. She just went to sleep. An overdose, most likely, chasing withdrawal or chasing peace. Ash had seen it too many times. Good people trapped in cycles too strong to outrun. "How long have you been walking?" 2 days. Maybe more. She's getting heavier. I can't." His legs gave out completely this time. Ash caught them both before they hit the ground, scooping up boy and baby together. Eli fought him instantly, small fists pounding his chest. "No, let go. You can't have her, Eli. Look at me." Something in his voice cut through the panic. Eli went still, wild eyes locked on Ash's. "I am not going to hurt you. I am not taking your sister. I'm going to help. You understand?" "Promise," Eli whispered, and all 6 years old of bravado drained out of him at once. "I promise." He carried them both to his bike, wrapped his own leather vest around Ruby like a sling against his chest, and told Eli to grip his belt with both hands and never let go. Then, for the first time in 12 years, Ash Calder rode towards something instead of away from it. He talked to Eli the whole ride, kept him tethered with words while the wind tried to steal them away. Learned that Ruby laughed at everything, that she kicked her legs when Eli sang to her, that she hadn't kicked in a day and a half. Learned that the man at the gas station had tried to grab her, and Eli had bitten him hard enough to taste blood and hadn't cared. That was brave, Ash told him. Brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared, and you do it anyway. They rolled into the small town of Sundown Flats as dusk settled, and Ash aimed for the only lit-up building he could find, a diner called Dusty's. 24 hours, neon buzzing against the darkening sky. The bell over the door jangled. Every head turned. What they saw was a massive tattooed biker, a filthy barefoot child, and an infant wrapped in what looked like a motorcycle vest. An older woman behind the counter reached slowly towards something under the register. "Don't," Ash said, voice level. "I'm not here for trouble. This baby needs help right now." The suspicion in the woman's face didn't vanish, but something else joined it. Concerned, she called for someone named Carla, and a younger woman burst out from the back, took one look, and moved without a second's hesitation. I was an 15 years. Let me see her. She unwrapped Ruby with practiced hands, and her face tightened immediately. Severely dehydrated, fever's at least 103. She needs fluids now. Someone ran for the emergency kit and called the town doctor. Carla knelt to Eli's level and asked his name gently. He wouldn't answer at first, pressed against Ash's leg, until Ash told him it was okay, that Carla was helping. The old doctor arrived minutes later and took over with quiet efficiency, while Ash stood back feeling utterly useless. A man who'd survived beatings that should have killed him, undone by watching a baby fight to breathe. A small hand slipped into his. Eli stood beside him, chocolate milk mustache on his lip, soup untouched. Is she going to die? Ash had promised this kid he wouldn't lie. I don't know, buddy. But she's fighting, and she's got good hands helping her. I can't lose her. She's all I have left. Ash crouched to his eye level. You carried her 2 days through the desert. You fought off a grown man to protect her. You kept her alive when nobody else was there. You're the reason she's got a chance right now. Whatever happens, you did everything right. Then why does it hurt this bad? Because you love her. That's what love does. The diner doors swung open again, heavier footsteps this time. A sheriff filled the frame, hand resting near his holster, eyes sweeping across the scene, the biker, the sobbing child, the baby on the counter. Someone start talking. Sheriff Boone had 30 years in law enforcement and had seen plenty he wished he could unsee. But this didn't add up cleanly in his head. Ash explained it straight, found them on the highway, mother dead 3 days, boy carrying his sister the whole way, no lies, no excuses. Boone's eyes narrowed on him the whole time, filing away every detail to run the second he got to his cruiser. Eli stepped out from behind Ash's leg, chin lifted despite everything. He's not a bad guy. He's the one who stopped. Lots of cars drove past and nobody else did. He did. That landed somewhere Boone didn't expect. He studied Ash again, not the tension of a guilty man, more like a man standing his ground and nowhere near ready to run. The doctor cut through the moment. Sheriff, whatever this is can wait. This baby needs a hospital, now. Boone made the call fast. His own cruiser. Lights on. No siren. Straight to Mercy General 40, 5 minutes out, with Carla riding in back to keep the IV steady. Eli refused to be separated from Ash for even the drive, gripping 2 of his fingers the entire way, telling him more about his mother in a whisper barely audible over the engine. She used to sing to him at night. Called him her sunshine. Got sick. Not cold sick. A different kind of sick. The kind that needed medicine that cost too much, so sometimes she got it from bad people instead. Her boyfriend, not Eli's father, his real father, had died when he was 3, had threatened more than once that if she ever left him he'd take Ruby and sell her. Because Ruby wasn't his blood. Boone's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. That boyfriend got a name, son? Grady, Eli said, and immediately looked terrified he'd said it. Mama said never say his name. He's not finding you, Boone said, iron in his voice. Not while I'm around. They arrived to a flurry of blue scrubs and shouted vitals. Ruby swept away into the pediatric wing, while Eli fought to follow before Ash caught him. Let them work, buddy. You got her here. That was your job. Let them finish theirs. The next hours blurred. A doctor named Alvarez, delivering careful, honest news about how close it had been. How the next full day would decide everything. Eli pressed both palms to the glass, separating him from his sister, and talked to her the whole night, telling her he hadn't left. He'd never leave. Somewhere in that stretch, a woman in a severe gray suit arrived with a clipboard. a CPS supervisor named Whitfield, all policy and procedure, informing them the children were now wards of the state and would need to be placed, likely separately given the boy's age and documented behavioral history. They stay together, Ash said immediately. You separate them. He'll run. He'll go looking for her, and next time nobody might be there to stop him. The standoff might have gone badly if a pastor named Elias Cross hadn't walked in at exactly the right moment, offering the church's emergency custody provisions to buy time. Whitfield reluctantly backed off. 24 hours, she said. That's all I can give. That single day changed everything. Cross sat with Ash afterward and asked him plainly what had happened to bring him to this point. And Ash told him the whole truth. The club, the order he refused, the beating, the 12 years of running. Cross, it turned out, understood something about being written off. He'd lost everything to addiction once himself before a stranger stopped for him in an alley the same way Ash had stopped on that highway. Those children need someone who won't leave, Cross told him. Can you be that person? I don't know. I've never been that for anyone. Maybe it's time to learn. That night a call came through on Ash's phone from a number he recognized in his bones, his old president, a man they called Cutter, who'd caught wind of the news story and wasn't pleased his old brother was suddenly playing hero on television. A meeting was demanded. Midnight, an abandoned barn outside town alone, or Mercy General's pediatric wing might have a very bad night. Ash went. 2 young riders flanked Cutter when he arrived, expecting the old Ash, fists first, rage burning. Instead, he offered something else. Leverage. 12 years of silence he'd kept out of indifference, he told them, could just as easily become 12 years of testimony if anything happened to those kids. One of the older riders, a man named Reyes who'd lost his own daughter to overdose and never gotten to meet the grandson taken from him, broke ranks entirely. Told Cutter this wasn't what he'd signed up for, and walked out, taking the younger one with him. Cutter, alone and out of leverage, finally backed down, telling Ash to disappear and stay disappeared. He rode back to the hospital as the sun came up, and Eli was waiting, having spent a sleepless night worried he wouldn't come back. You promised, the boy said, voice breaking. I promised, Ash answered, and I keep them. Ruby's fever broke that morning. Within days she was crying for food instead of lying silent, and Dr. Alvarez called it stubbornness as much as medicine. A foster family named the Ashworths came forward, willing to take both children together, and though Eli was terrified at first, he laid down one condition before he'd agree to anything, that Ash visit every single day. He got his promise. But 3 days later, a detective called from Phoenix. They'd found a body in the desert matching the description of the children's mother. Ash drove Eli there himself, because the boy insisted on saying goodbye. Standing at the glass, Eli told his mother everything, that he'd found help, that Ruby was safe, that a man named Ash took care of them now and never broke a promise. Ash held him through every word. A folded letter, found on the body, was handed to Ash afterward. In shaking handwriting, a woman named Nora Reyes had written to whoever might find her children, begging them not to be separated, describing her son as the strongest person she'd ever known, and her daughter as the one pure joy of a terrible situation. Tell Caleb it's not his fault, she'd written. Tell him it was never his fault. Thank you, stranger, for stopping. Months of foster classes, home visits, and painful honesty about his past followed. Ash learned to change diapers, to burn pancakes into shapes vaguely resembling motorcycles, to answer every hard question in the parenting circles without flinching. Sheriff Boone became an unlikely ally. Whitfield, once his fiercest obstacle, ended up writing one of his strongest references. At the adoption hearing, Eli stood in front of the judge and said his mother used to believe angels didn't always have wings. Sometimes they had tattoos and motorcycles and scary faces, and they were still angels. The petition was granted. Ash Calder walked out of that courtroom a father. A year later, they drove back to that same stretch of highway together. Ash, Eli, and Ruby, walking on her own 2 feet now, calling him Daddy every chance she got. Eli stood at the exact spot where it had all started and said simply, "Thank you for stopping." Ash knelt down and told him the truth, that he'd spent 12 years running from who he was, believing he didn't deserve anything good, until he heard a child crying in the desert, and something inside him that he thought was dead finally woke back up. "You didn't rescue us," Eli said. "We rescued each other." If this story moved you, go ahead and hit subscribe, because there are more stories like this one waiting. Moments where the person everyone expected to keep driving is the one who finally stops.